What's up guys, Twizted Sideways here, and today we are doing our in-depth analysis of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild trailer that was shown off at the Switch conference. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we see is a beautiful coastal shot that also shows off the new extended draw distance the Switch has, and if we look to the right here, we can see a shrine that we'll either have to swim to or use a raft to get to. We then get a look at another coastal area showing off some of the wildlife and the seagulls. This kind of reminds me of Wind Waker. And then going along with the tropical vibe, we get this beautiful scene with 3 waterfalls, and if you look very closely in the bottom right, it's a little hard to see, but there's like almost a rectangular thing that looks like it could possibly be something like a sign or some sort of landmarking. And then we get an awesome shot of the Gerudo Desert, which now has a race of sand walruses, and then you can see a village in the back. And on the other side, we have these archway and the resurrection towers in the top right, and a sandstorm that could possibly be just a weather effect that happens randomly. Or my thought is that it could possibly be a sandstorm protecting the spirit temple or the area that you have to go to get this dungeon in this area, just like in Ocarina of Time's spirit temple. Following that, we get a preview of what is possibly Snow Peak, and we get to see some more wildlife with this little snow fox stretching. We then get a very small glimpse of what could be Faron Woods, and we also get to finally see some familiar faces, the Koroks. And to me, it kind of looks like they're lined up almost as if they are leading us somewhere, and then the trailer seems to back this theory by immediately showing us that they seem to be guiding us to the Master Sword of Resurrection and the Great Deku Tree. Now, the Master Sword of Resurrection in this scene has a blue glow coming from it, and we have not seen this before, but get this feeling from the blue glow that I have seen somewhere before in another Zelda game, and it has a lot to do with time itself. But then we get our first glimpse of Link in this trailer, followed by, to the left of him, we get these wild horses and what seems like an enemy base inside of this crater with these huge bones and stuff. And then it just moves on from there to show the surrounding area before we finally get like this montage of gameplay, and then we hear the very first dialogue from the game trailer.
The history of the royal family of Hyrule is also the history of the Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has endured over the ages.
So to kind of recap what we saw in there, we hear a little bit about what seems like the royal family and Calamity Ganon have a connection. We see Link in Castletown Ruins on a horse, the statue of the goddess Hylia inside of the Temple of Time that we have seen in past gameplay, and a graveyard, just one of the many surrounding Hyrule of the Guardian. It's a Guardian graveyard. And then this next scene looks like a ruin or a temple, well, surrounded by water, maybe a water temple, I highly doubt it. But then we move on, and this scene looks like it could be Spectacle Mountain in the back, but I feel like this is more or less to show the draw distance and just the pure beauty of the game. Wrapping this part up, we get some footage that we have possibly seen before from the first Resurrection Tower awakening, and then Calamity Ganon surrounding the castle with this beam of light that we think could possibly be Zelda. We then get to see a skull base on Snow Peak where these enemies are being summoned what looks like by Calamity Ganon. We then see Link deal with 3 fairly large enemies. We see the Guardian, a rock golem, and what seems to be some giant dinosaur lizard thing in the Gerudo Desert. We then get to see cryosis being used by Link, possibly dodging poisonous water from this calamity goo on the right, jumping towards this huge stone structure. We finally get to see a fully armored Link with his shield up, stomping towards this fire-breathing Lizalfos in what could possibly be the fire temple inside of Death Mountain. We also get to see a different race of bokoblins, possibly this giant Cyclops bokoblin, which looks like he has human weapons around his neck. So I'm thinking that when he is beaten, you possibly get to use those as your reward. Link then seems to be being attacked by a rogue Sheikah Samurai, as you can tell by his mask, which is an upside down Sheikah eye as opposed to the monks inside of the shrines. We then get to see the Magnesis ability where Link picks up this giant boulder and absolutely destroys these bokoblins from a distance, just before he then moves on to a skull base and absolutely blows it to smithereens. And then if you pay close attention, you can see him actually step just to the left to dodge an arrow and what looks almost like a water blast from these purple Lizalfos. So the next thing we get to see is a piece of Sheikah technology that we haven't seen before, and I'm actually going to save that until the end of the video. We then see an up-close look at Ganon circling the tower and wreaking some havoc, just before we then see Link jump off of a cliff, which seems to be somewhere deeper into Hyrule, and then we get our first look at what seems could be Kakariko Village. I believe this could be Kakariko for a number of reasons. We have our potion shop, which has 4 different colored potions and the bottle on the banner. And then we get a look at some villagers beside a lantern and what seems could be some shrines. And then we see the windmills are pretty dominant here, which windmills have been pretty dominant in all of Kakariko villages. We have no time to ponder on this because we then get a look at Gerudo Village. You can tell it's Gerudo because specifically on the entranceway there's the Gerudo sign. Something I'm not 100% sure on is this huge structure that seems to have a waterway coming through it, which they have intricately woven on top of their roofs. I'm not sure if it's because they seem to worship this water now. I mean, they are in the desert and water can be pretty scarce. We finally get a closer look at the surrounding areas of Death Mountain, and it actually seems like Death Mountain now with these carcasses of these trees, and the whole area itself just seems dead and full of this smog. We then get a quick scene of a guardian roaming through a stormy castle town and a scene of Link on a raft at another coastal area before we get another batch of voice acting.
That look on your face tells me that you have no recollection of me, however.
I think you are now ready to hear what happened 100 years ago.
So here we get our first shot of what seems to be the Great Deku Tree and the Koroks. We know the Koroks lived with the Great Deku Tree on Forest Haven in Wind Waker. You can see his mouth move a little there. So it leads to be the Great Deku Tree, followed by a shot of Link in utter confusion almost because his memory was erased so he would not remember the Great Deku Tree, and the Great Deku Tree, if that's who's talking, even mentions that. We then get a shot of a fiery battlefield almost of dead guardians. So in this shot right here, we see a flower that can be seen in multiple scenes, and as well as the Master Edition of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild statue has this as well, so it holds a significant role for the game. What that is, I guess we'll just have to wait until March the 3rd to find out. So in this shot, we return to the very first Resurrection Tower that is awakened in the Great Plateau, And then the camera does this very fast whip around that shows you some ruins just below the Great Plateau. So this guy right here, I'm actually going to save for the end of the video as well. Sorry to keep doing this. We get a quick glimpse at a concerned Link in an area I'm going to save for later as well before we see Zelda bathing in a goddess spring, which we know from Skyward Sword she is doing to relive the past life as the goddess Hylia. We then see a battered Link turning around in dismay before this huge creature that I'm saving for later as well, and then Link and Zelda together, which means we could be traveling with her at one point in the game. We then see one of the Sheikah shrines bursting through the ground, which again encourages the fact that they've been underground for thousands of years. We then see Link leading Zelda and he loses her hand. I've connected it with this clip of the dismayed Link. They seem to fit together perfectly, almost as if one cutscene.
Everything I've done up until now, it was all for nothing.
So not only do we finally get to see Zelda's face, but we also get to see what seems to be a more interactive princess, with her actually showing emotion and interacting. We also get to see what seems to be the castle town from Twilight Princess, just because it looks so close, and the mass destruction that the Guardians are wreaking on it. We then get to see Link and Zelda in a scene that I'm unsure of where it takes place, just in what could be Hyrule Field, and then a Zelda in dismay running in what could be the Gerudo Desert or close to Death Mountain. In this scene, I'm only going to comment on the fact that the girl looks extremely like a Garuda, and this creature to the right could be another of the Sand Walrus. My favorite and probably the most heart-wrenching scene is the scene we get to see of Zelda literally crying into Link's shoulder. I dare say it is the most emotion we have ever seen from Zelda, and I am so excited. So we then see Link on horseback fighting with a Bokoblin on horseback attacking as well, and we see a skeleton Lizalfos that gets slapped right in the face with an ice arrow, freezing him completely. We finally get confirmation of Goron's, and there is no disappointment. This guy looks amazing. Just before he claps his hands and says, "Here it comes." We then see Link paragliding to a statue which I believe to be the Gerudo Sand Goddess. Not sure because it looks like there is snow, but we'll have to wait and see. And of course it would not be a Zelda game without a Great Fairy caked in makeup, looking creepy as ever, and Nintendo hit the nail on the head this time. We get another coastal shot showing just how beautiful this game really is before we get a confirmation that the redheaded girl from the last scene is in fact a Garuda. And immediately following the Garuda confirmation, we get the Zora confirmation, which I'm so excited for. We get another Sheikah area that I'm also saving for the end. Sorry, I keep doing this. And we get a very short clip of a female Zora. So seeing these three sages reminds me a lot of three of the sages from Ocarina of Time, and if I have any guess, I'm thinking that these three might be sages as well. Not really sure what their purpose is, but that's just the vibe that I'm getting from these guys. So we then see this guy. He's been seen in a trailer before, just before the giant bird thing, and he's laughing in this one, so I'm getting he's a good guy, not a bad guy from this trailer. So following that up, we get more footage of the Zoras, and this big red shark guy is probably the first we've seen of his kind. But then if we look a little closer into this scene, right behind Link, we see this Manta Ray Zora, which means that there could possibly be different races, and then what looks like to the right could be King Jaboon. Either way, he's the king of the Zoras. Alright, so as we're wrapping things up here, we do get to see Zelda using almost an attack or a power of hers to defend a defeated Link. He is holding the Resurrection Sword, so maybe this is before he dies? I'm not really sure, but we then get to see a very distressed Zelda, and she is looking towards Castletown, or better yet, just Hyrule Castle in general. And it looks like this is before even Calamity Ganon has hit it. And then we get to see the exact same defeated Link rise up and raise the sword out of the ground to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild title. So we see Zelda in her goddess dress in what seems to be the Lost Woods in front of the Great Deku Tree just before we finally hear her say,
Open your eyes.
and then that is it. That is the analysis, except for the things that I said I was going to save until the end of the video. The giant Sheikah technology that we have seen throughout this video. I'm going to put my 2 cents in on what I believe these guys are and exactly what they possibly do. So the last topic we're going to hit on this video is these giant Sheikah creatures that we see crawling around everywhere. First we have this big lizard looking dude that's crawling around Death Mountain because you can tell from the flame on his claws. And then we have this giant camel thing that we see in the Gerudo Desert, where we also get our first glimpse at the Gerudo Girl. We can also see him walking in another scene, and from the looks of this guy, he's pretty big. He looks like he is a temple on his own. And then, of course, in the last trailer we got before this one, we see this giant bird creature, and I actually think these guys are temples. In the Master Edition of the game, when they were showing that off, we get to see a clip of all 4. And all 4 looks like a bird, a chameleon or lizard, the camel, and the elephant. I believe the 3 that we have seen so far are here in this trailer, but we have not seen the elephant yet, and I think they could be the temples or dungeons, like the main ones in those areas. And because I think these guys are temples themselves, I think these 2 clips right here that we get of Link running around inside of these huge areas, I think this could actually be the inside of those creatures. Using your abilities, the Magnesis and the Cryosis, I would imagine you would be able to climb, jump, move around. Which then leads me to the last point before we end this video. I think this right here, this giant brain looking thing, might actually be a brain from one of these creatures that you activate, and then it turns it into the blue light, which then of course we know is the good Sheikah mechanism, I guess is what you would call them. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I had a ton of fun making this analysis video and picking out some of the things I spotted in this trailer. Let me know in the comments below if you spot anything that I missed, and I will see you guys in the next one.